Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Quandra CB. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you have been rocking with your girl, welcome back. As you can tell by today's title, we're going to do a deep dive into a very serious topic. So if that will interest you, keep on watching. How did I get to the point that I want to do a video on the erasure of teen culture? Well, if you have been rocking with me for long enough to know, you know that I am currently in my 11th year of being an educator, almost to my 12th. Pray that I can hang in here. But as I have been teaching for the past 11 years, a lot of things, particularly high school students, have crossed my mind. And I was thinking, like, why don't I see a relevant or prevalent teenage culture like we had when we were coming up? Now, when we were coming up, let's speak of my generation. I am a millennial. I was born in 1989, and I remember being a kid. I remember going through those critical stages of development, and I think nowadays kids aren't doing that. They are going from being a kid to bam, they are thrust into adulthood. Is no middleman like it used to be. I remember going through that awkward adolescence and puberty and early onset puberty versus some of my friends who were late onsetters, and it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was growing pains, and it was exactly what was needed during that time and during this time to separate you from being an adult. So let's get into some of the things and how do we even get to this point? But there is no teen culture. Representation matters. In 2005, I remember looking up to people like Kyla Pratt. I remember looking up to people like Keke Palmer, Raven-Symoné. Her fashion sense was like unmatched. I remember watching her. Lindsay Lohan. Okay, when Lindsay Lohan, when the movie Mean Girls dropped, OMG. OMG. You just had to be there. But like I said, I remember it, and I remember having to look at these teenage girls because during that time you actually had teenagers that represented what it was like to be a teenager. I remember shows like That So Raven that delved into those topics. I remember watching Moesha in my early in my late childhood years. I remember watching shows like that and seeing her go to college and seeing her juggle between who she wanted. Did she want Hakeem? Did she want Q? Like, I remember that. And like I said, representation matters, because when we were faced with these situations head on, we think back to, oh, Moesha did this, and it, not that it made us do what we did, but it did influence the decisions that we made as teenagers, because we had that representation on TV that catered to teens and catered to the culture and catered to those sensitive topics that we were going through back then. I mean, think about Degrassi and that one episode of Degrassi. Look at this. See, it took you back, right? And like I said, we heard it, we saw it, and we was able to get that positive representation that was needed, even if it was not coming from people in your house or people in your household or people within your family. You saw it on TV, and it was a positive, not always positive, but it was a representation of teenage culture. Different World inspired the whole generation of students, Gen Xers to be exact, to attend historically Black colleges and universities, aka HBCUs. It was their representation. And like I said, positively or negatively, the choices that teens made during that time was totally reflective on what they saw people that looked like them doing, because they had it. Let's talk about the music. We remember those She's a R&B songs. One that comes to mind when I think of my teen years was You Can Wear My Jacket. It actually made you want to go to school. Cheesy as it was, it was teenagey. It was puppy love. It's what it was. And when we saw that on TV, we expected inspired to have that. And that goes back to representation matters. Kids today do not have that positive representation on TV. When you were a teen, you had to actually leave your home to go and get an outfit, whether it was for a school dance, whether it was for a party, whether it was for the football game that Friday night or the basketball game. Whenever you had to actually get up, go leave your house and go get it. And it was probably going to be, your outfit was probably going to be inspired by somebody that you saw in J14 magazine, your favorite celebrity on TV. I remember Sierra inspired a whole group of us to go to the mall and get those crop jackets that we wore. That's what I said, representation matters. The fur boots that everybody went crazy over. Come on now. Apple bottom jeans. It was what it was. You saw people on TV. You went to the mall and you actually got it. You went to the stores in the mall that actually cater to teenagers. Stores like The Limited, Claire's. And people will say, well, Claire's still exists. Claire's back in 2005 is not the Claire's in 2023. Trust me. Claire's used to be that spot, okay? It's not the same. And that the mall is dying. It's because you don't have to leave the house to shop anymore. At one point in time, that was the only way you can get an outfit to attend anything. And because you have a generation of students who don't have to leave the house, it's right there in front of them, they don't have to go to the mall. Malls thrived. Millennials, correct me if I'm wrong, but malls thrived when we were younger because we actually had to go to them. Now, we used to get $20 and the only thing we probably left out with was a pair of earrings from Claire's and something to eat, you know, from the little food court. Or and if you grew up like I did, your mom didn't even have a food court. You had probably like a little hub store in the mall where you got your nachos and your popcorn, but you left there with something, is what I'm saying. Or you just went on to McDonald's and got you something to eat and your Saturday evening was complete. The overall talking point and why I feel like there has been an erasure of teen culture is because of the over accessibility and access to adult-like content. That's just what it is. That's just what it is in a nutshell. The internet. Let's not put all the blame on the people. The technology boom.
Okay, internet Quandra here now. Don't get me wrong. Our generation definitely had access to adult-like content. But do y'all know how long it took us to access it? Think about dial-up and tying up the phone line. Somebody was going to catch you. Nowadays, it's just right at these kids' fingertips. Anyway, back to the video.
Also contributed to the erasure of teen culture. Because what you used to have to leave the house to do, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to do it anymore at all. I mean, just think about it. We had to go to school to see our friends. We had to see our friends at school. We had to see them at the football games. We had to actually leave the house to see our friends. We had to ride our bikes down the block to see our friends. Nowadays, they don't. You can FaceTime your friend. You miss school, you can just log on Instagram and see what's going on. If we wanted that story of what happened, we either had to call our friends that night when we missed school or just wait till we got to school to hear about it. Kids now spend hours going back and forth online arguing, and then they get to school and then it's on. Back then, you just saw the op and it was on at school. You wasn't no talking. I think about the athletes. I was talking to a football player. He was a football player when I was in school, and he was saying, yeah, we couldn't talk noise to the other team or the opposing team. We had to wait till we saw them on the field Friday night. It was no going back and forth. Like now, they're looking up their opponent Monday and they're like, oh, we're gonna get y'all when we see y'all. It's on. Like we you know, it wasn't like that. So the over accessibility of people at your fingertips has also contributed to a decline in teen culture. Accessibility, right, of having them at your fingertips. You can send text messages. Like, we sent text messages, don't get me wrong, but text messages were like for the elite. When I got my phone, text messages were expensive to send. So you still had to talk. You still had to send letters if you wanted to be that cheesy. You know? Another contributor to the decline of teen culture is the music that these kids consume nowadays. R&B when we were teenagers was what it was. It was at the forefront. It was the genre of music that everybody listened to. It was everywhere. Soul music, R&B music, music that you felt deep down in your soul. That was everywhere, and it was accessible. Now don't get me wrong, because the argument comes up, well, you also had artists like 50 Cent, you also had Gucci Mane, you also had, you know, Nelly and people like that who sang hip-hop. Yeah, that's true. But hip-hop was not pushed as much as it was now, as much as it is now. It was not pushed, let's be clear. In 2005, you hear a rap song at a dance, at a party, but it was gonna always circle back to that cheesy R&B song. Our generation wanted and needed and aspired to have love and revere love, because that's all we saw. We saw teenage shows. Everywhere we looked, it was love. Oh, look at that cute couple. Look at that couple on the video. And I used to hate on Jennifer Freeman. I remember she used to always be in the B2K videos. Her and Kylie Pratt, I used to be like, oh, really? But that's what it was. It was okay to be in love. The messages that were presented to that population of teens, which back in 2005, 2006, was love. For what we knew it to be anyway, but it was pushed. That's all we listened to. If you grew up in a house that had that disco and soul era, you also heard that type of music that still pushed love. And I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, so I grew up hearing a lot of blues music. It still was music that made you think, it made you pause, and it still circled around to one concept, and that was love. And so nowadays you hear a hip-hop song, and hip-hop has just dominated. It's dominated. People don't want cheesy anymore. People don't want to be walking down the hall wearing your boyfriend's jacket. And like, they don't want that anymore. They don't need that. This culture has become the culture that hip-hop is raising. And it's sad to say, because the hip-hop, ooh, that's a whole nother video. But that's what's at the forefront. Love is not pushed in hip-hop anymore. Designer and, you know, lavish trips and lavish cars, that's what's pushed nowadays. And can you, because we know representation matters, if that's all I'm seeing when I scroll up and down Instagram and I scroll up and down TikTok, I'm going to naturally aspire to be that. Because think about it, most of our decisions were influenced by what we saw on TV, but we had that representation that of proper teenage, we had proper teenage representation. They don't have that anymore, not at all. The sum of the video, how can we get forward? How do we move forward from not having any type of positive representation on TV, not having a lot of positive representation via music, not having stores that cater to teens? How do we move forward from that? And the question is not an easy one to answer. It's really not, because we have gotten so far away from it that even in an attempt to try to revive it, I don't know. Because when I think back, I think about how we actually had teen idols. Like, we actually looked up to people who were around our age, and we still look at these people now, and it's still sometimes like, wow, so-and-so is my age, or, you know, and I'm like, whoa, like, these people, we grown up together. Kids today don't have that. Bring back teen stores. Can we bring back stores that actually have junior sizes? Like I said, kids today are just skipping that era because it's not there. The average store does not even have junior sizes. Another suggestion would be to ensure that we are pushing toward proper representation of teenagers out there. If you see a teenager in your community that's doing pretty darn good for themselves, we need to uplift them. We need to say, hey, not put that pressure on them, but say, hey, you're doing it. You know, you're doing it. We also need to continue to uplift and encourage them regardless of what it is. I think the lack of encouragement, the lack of, hey, you got all A's, That's awesome. And not saying you got all A's, that's so lame. Or you came to school every day, that's so lame. We actually need to stop and encourage these kids to say, okay, hey, I'm a teenager and I'm doing well. And to also encourage other students to look at them students and say, hey, this is proper representation. When we see teenagers, when they make the news, like kids that are graduating high school early, we need to promote them and share them very quickly. Just as much as we share myths and rumors, we need to be sharing these positive stories of kids that are in that era as well. Let's get back to teaching proper etiquette. I think somewhere down the line, etiquette has been thrown out the door. I remember my mama told me how to be a young lady. It was taught to me. You don't wear bonnets in public. You don't do that. Every day you leave the house, you leave looking your very best. You don't ever know. If you grew up in the South, it was, you don't know who you're gonna run into. You always gotta have on some clothes. I always wear clean underwear, you never. Like, those things were taught to a whole generation of millennials. Can't speak for other generations because I don't know, but they were taught to us. We really need to get back to teaching our young ladies and our young men about just etiquette. You ask the average teenager now, what is etiquette? Define etiquette. They don't know. All I have for this video, I just wanted to quickly come on. I hope this video is 23. Well, when I edit it, it probably won't be 23 minutes. But I wanted to just do a video about something I was noticing. There is no teenage culture anymore. How do you suggest we fix that? Hop in the comments down below. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys on my next deep dive. Bye.